is 3 lobes, 2 notches, anterior and posterior notches, relation, white matter in the form of 3 peduncle, gray matter in the form of 4 nuclei, and then applied anatomy. So this is what you need for the cerebellum. Now next we are going to see very important question, that is ventricle. We will see the ventricle all in detail, but ventricle, first of all, you should know these are the cavities which produced and store the CSF. So within the brain, within the CNS, you have got cavities. Those cavities produce the CSF as well as they store the CSF. Out of these, you have 2 lateral ventricle, 1 third ventricle and 1 fourth ventricle. The lateral ventricle are the cavities of forebrain, third ventricle is the cavity of midbrain, and fourth ventricle is the cavity of hindbrain. So during development, the brain has got a brain tube, so it divides into forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. So fourth ventricle is the cavity of hindbrain, this one, fourth ventricle. So it is a tent-shaped cavity like this. It is a tent shape like this. All the direction tent is there. Like that tent-shaped cavity within your hindbrain. This is the fourth ventricle. You see in this diagram, this lies behind the brain stem. It lies behind the posterior surface of lower part of pons and posterior surface of upper part of medulla. This is medulla, this is pons. So posterior surface of lower part of pons and posterior surface of upper part of medulla, they lie anteriorly, they form the floor. So it is like this, you see. This is not like this or like, it is like this. So you have brainstem here that form the floor. So in this diagram you see this is floor by the brainstem. Roof, this is the roof. Roof is like this tent. Superior roof and inferior roof. Superior and inferior. This is the superior roof, this is inferior roof. So you have floor, roof, lateral wall. You see the lateral wall. Now this is the C. And it is covered. The roof is covered by the cerebellum. So this is fourth ventricle. Now, if you see the roof of fourth ventricle, spherically it is formed by superior medullary velum. This is superior medullary velum. You can nicely see in our museum also once you come. Superior medullary velum is a thin sheet of white matter. Okay, it's a thin sheet of white matter. And inferior medullary velum, it forms the lower part of the roof. Inferior medullary velum, it is formed by the capillary plexus. So this is the superior roof, this is the inferior roof. Now, when you see the superior medullary velum, this is superior medullary velum, it goes in the substance of cerebellum. This is in the cerebellum. Now the important most is floor of fourth ventricle. Yes. So once again, the floor of fourth ventricle is important for major question. So if you see the floor of fourth ventricle, so the floor is formed by posterior surface of the pons and posterior surface of the medulla. That too, upper part of posterior surface of the medulla and lower part of posterior surface of the pons. Now with the diagram you can explain very easily. The floor is divided into 2 equal half by median sulcus. This is the median sulcus. The median sulcus is a midline depression that divides the floor into 2 equal half. Lateral to median sulcus, there is another depression that is known as sulcus limitans. This is sulcus limitans. Now we'll see what are the feature in floor formed by the pons and feature in the floor formed by the medulla. So first we are going to see the pons part which form the floor. Between the sulcus limitans and sulcus median, this is median sulcus, this is sulcus limitan, there is an elevation. This elevation, okay, this elevation is known as facial colliculus and whole of this elevation is known as median eminence. So median eminence is an elevation in the floor of fourth ventricle formed by the pons. This elevation is narrow above and broad below. This is median eminence. Within this median eminence, the lower rounded elevation is there. This lower rounded elevation is known as facial colliculus. Facial colliculus. The facial colliculus is elevation produced due to underlying nuclei of the facial nerve and nuclei of the abducent nerve and fiber of the facial nerve. The fiber of facial nerve around the nucleus of abducent nerve, they form elevation. This is known as facial colliculus. So this is facial colliculus. Whole elevation is median eminence. Now on the sulcus limitans upper part, you can make out the blue area. This is known as locus coeruleus. Locus coeruleus is bluish color area. This is produced due to underlying neurons of substantia ferruginea. So it is produced due to neuron of substantia ferruginea, and the vomiting center are present over here. The vomiting center are present over here. Below the substantia ferruginea, you have inverted V-shaped depression. This inverted V-shaped depression is known as superior fovea. This is the superior fovea. Then you have the floor of fourth ventricle formed by the medulla. Here, what do you see? You can make out the sulcus limitans and median sulcus. Here, there is inverted V-shaped depression. This one, it is inferior fovea. This is the inferior fovea. Inferior fovea is inverted V-shaped depression in the floor formed by the medulla. From here, you can see an oblique line. This is the oblique line from sulcus limitans to the median sulcus. This oblique line divides this area into two triangular area. These two triangular area are hypoglossal triangle medially and vagal triangle laterally. The hypoglossal triangle contains the nuclei of 12th cranial nerve, hypoglossal nerve, and vagal triangle contains the vital center, respiratory center and cardiac center are present over here. Now at the junction of pons and medulla in the floor, here we have vestibular nuclei, nuclei of 8th cranial nerve. Over that we have transverse running fiber. These are the fiber of stria terminalis. I'll try to show you the easy diagram which you can draw in exam. So that with you see same this one. Now same, the easy diagram which you can draw, I'll find out that this one. See. Here you can draw this very easy. So this is you have hypoglossal triangle, vagal triangle. Now below the vagal triangle, where see the lateral boundary of fourth ventricle is formed by gracile tubercle and connate tubercle. Gracile tubercle and connate tubercle. Where the two gracile tubercle meet, here you see you have area postrema. This is the area postrema. So area postrema, where the two gracile tubercle meet, this is the area postrema, and where these two lower line meet here, this is known as obex. So this is obex, this is area postrema, and this looks like the nib of a pen. Nowadays you don't have those nibs. Previously the pen were having nibs also. So due to that reason, the name is given calamus secretorius. Calamus secretorius is a Latin word. The meaning is it looks like a nib of the pen. So this looks like the nib of the pen. So here you have obex, area postrema, you have calamus secretorius, laterally you have gracile tubercle, connate tubercle, then you have hypoglossal triangle, you have vagal triangle, stria medullaris, facial colliculus, median eminence, superior fovea, inferior fovea. All these are features of floor of fourth ventricle. These are features of floor of fourth ventricle. So this is about the floor of fourth ventricle. That can be a major question. Other than that, if you see once again, this is floor of fourth ventricle. Now in fourth ventricle has communication. If you see this is fourth ventricle, fourth ventricle communicate above with the third ventricle through cerebral aqueduct. It communicate above with the third ventricle through cerebral aqueduct, and below the fourth ventricle, if you see the fourth ventricle, below the fourth ventricle has communication with subarachnoid space by three foramina, one in midline, foramina of Magendie, and two lateral foramina of Luschka. So foramina of Luschka is present here, both the side, and foramina of Magendie is present here. So through these foramina, the CSF enter from fourth ventricle to the subarachnoid space. Now you see same diagram. Now, what are the recesses of fourth ventricle? Recesses. Recess is extension of the space. Fourth ventricle is a cavity. That cavity extends to the cerebellum and other white matter also. So, extension of the cavity of fourth ventricle is known as recess. And in fourth ventricle, we have two lateral recesses. You can make out two lateral recesses, two lateral dorsal on the posterior side, two lateral dorsal recesses, and one median dorsal recess. So there are 5 recesses. You have to know the name only. Two lateral recesses, two dorsal lateral recesses, and one median dorsal recess. These are extension of the cavity of fourth ventricle, which contains CSF. Now you see, these are the lateral recesses. Then I told you median aperture foramina of Magendie and lateral aperture foramina of Luschka. So through that, it is communicated with subarachnoid space. Now same fourth ventricle. This is the fourth ventricle.